But me, I was stubborn when it came to medical things. Just very stubborn. And I went to the doctor and he says, "Brad, get to the hospital right now." And I said, "Doctor, come on, there's got to be something else. I don't need to go to the hospital." And at the time, I don't even think I had insurance. And I just, I was like going, "Oh my gosh, I can't afford this. I don't want to do this." And things weren't going well financially. And he actually threatened me. He said, if you don't go now, I'm going to treat this as if you're wanting to kill yourself, and I'm going to call the cops, and they will admit you. And I said, "Okay, I'll go." So I went down to the hospital, and after 4 hours of testing, I was like, "Okay." The doctor comes in. He says, "Brad, there's something in your head there, and we don't know what it is."
Oh my goodness. Welcome to Stories of Hope in Hard Times, the show that explores how people endure and even thrive in difficult times, all with God's help. I'm your host, Tamara K. Anderson. Join me on a journey to find inspiring stories of hope and wisdom learned in life's hardest moments. Today I'm interviewing someone who was born in Bakersfield, California, and lived there until he was 13. Then he quickly moved to a very small town in Alabama and began working on a 4,000-acre soybean farm. After that, he moved to Utah and ended up supporting himself through most of high school. He met and married his wife, Charlotte, and they've been married for almost 32 years. They have 6 children and 7 grandchildren. Professionally, he has gone from being a migrant worker to a trucker to the founder and president of Affinity Guidance Services. So quite a transition there. He has developed the Positive Self-Management Learning System, the Winning Mindset Series, the Ultimate Self-Worth Workshop Series, and several others. He has over 30 years of experience with assisting people in overcoming personal challenges and helping them succeed with their own personal goals. His passion is to help people discover their own self-worth, talents, value, and help create for themselves success in their lives. He's also served on several state and local boards to help others. I am pleased to introduce to you today Brad J. Neufeld. Brad, are you ready to share your story of hope?
Yes, I am, Tamara. Thank you so much for having me on.
We are so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. And I was just thinking the last time I was interviewed, oh my gosh, it's been 20 years.
Well, it's about time.
And thank you.
So as I was reading your bio, the question that kept popping into my mind is, how did you go from being basically a migrant worker to being a professional mentor and coach, especially for at-risk kids? How did that happen? I mean, that's a huge leap to take.
Well, obviously, I'm going to give God the credit for it. He's definitely steered me all of my life. And growing up in Bakersfield, California was kind of an interesting thing there. My dad was working down there as an accountant, and going to school down there was a challenge at the time. I always, when I think back, and I look where I live now with here in Utah, and I drive down the streets and I see kids' bicycles sitting out front and their garages open and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all of that would be gone if you were in California. I'd pull my bike up to the 7-Eleven and lay it down just to run in and grab a candy bar. I'd come out, the bike's gone, and there was a lot of drugs, a lot of gangs. At the time, there was only about 50,000 people there, and it was several different cultures. People were moving in and just kind of establishing their boundaries. I don't know what I'm going to call it, turf or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just this happy-go-lucky kid, but you'd just be walking down the street minding your own business. Next thing you know, you're surrounded by 5 or 6 guys saying, "What did you call me?" And I'm like, "I didn't call you anything." And they beat you up and laugh while they're walking away and stuff. So I got really good at running. And then, as time went on and I got to be 12, 13 years old, it was starting to get old, and So I was meaning running and everything, and I just thought, why doesn't other people get attacked all the time? Why is it just me? Am I just being singled out or something? And I realized no, that a lot of these people were part of various gangs, and there's so many different levels of gangs. We don't have to get into that, but and I thought, well, maybe if I join one of these gangs, maybe I'll get some protection. Maybe I won't have any of this. And I was actually talking to some people, some of my friends, about joining one. And I didn't feel right about it. I didn't want to do it. I knew how dangerous they were and all that. But then one night, and this happened to be 2 weeks after my 13th birthday, I was walking home late at night, about 10:30 at night, from my friend's house. And I pull up, when I say pull up, walked up to my house, and I see this big yellow moving van parked out in front of my house. And I'm like, what in the world? What is that? And I hurried up and ran inside, and my father's just finishing up a meeting with my brothers and sisters, and I didn't catch the whole thing, but basically the gist of it was that he had said that he'd made some bad financial decisions, and that we had to move, and we had to move that night. And
That night.
Yeah, that night, and I still to this day don't know the whole story, but that's what we did, and we just packed up and we jumped in the cars and we left.
Wow.
And we went clear across the country to Alabama, where some friends of our family lived. Frank and Marlene Crabtree, who I adore. We went down there and worked there for a little bit, but then partway through the summer, my dad and mom came to me and said, well, we need to go back out to California and kind of clean up our mess here. And so let's go ahead and pack up and let's go back to California. And I said, I don't think it'd be best if I go back, because here I am in this new environment. And I don't know if you can even picture this. I think there was 14 graduating seniors in my school that I was in. Very tiny town of 1,000 people. And everybody left their keys in their cars. Everybody left their windows and doors open 24/7. And I'm like, why do you guys leave your keys in your car? Somebody's going to steal it. And Mr. Crabtree goes, well, my neighbor might need to borrow it when I'm gone. And I'm like, I know, I don't get this. And so here I went from one extreme to the other, and I was like, oh, I kind of like the new one.
Yeah.
And so I just asked my parents, is there any way that I don't have to go back? And originally they had just talked about leaving me down there for a short period of time. But then after a week went by, Frank and Marlene sat me down and says, Brad, looks like you're going to be here for a while. We're going to be taking care of you for a little bit until your dad gets things going there again. And I said, okay. Let's go ahead and get you registered in school and whatnot. And they said, but we know you're only 13. However, you need to support yourself. And we had a trailer that we were living in at the time, and they said, you've got to start making the payments on this, and you can work here on the farm at $1.85 an hour. That was, yeah. Anyway, but I had to make the payments on the trailer and all that, and they said, sorry, you're 13, but you got to step it up, buddy. And I'm like, okay, I guess I got to do that. And they warned me, if you give us any trouble at all, you're gone. And so I had nowhere to turn. So I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I love the farming anyway. So that was how I ended up in Alabama. Well, I ended up being down there for 2.5 years.
Wow. And
so some great experiences there. I could spend a whole show just on Alabama. A lot of fun stuff there. The family, again, I was with was really wonderful. But Frank came to me again and said, Brad, I think it's time for you guys to get back together. Your mom and dad are going to move to Utah, and they'd like you to join them there again. And I said, okay. So I really don't want to, but I felt like it was the right thing to do. And so I moved out to Utah, got here just before Christmas of 1979, and 6 months of being here in Utah, my parents ended up going back to California, and so I was all here all by myself again. Learned a lot about teenagers. They didn't really want me as a friend. They wanted my apartment. I learned that the hard way. Anyway, so went on into getting through high school, and after high school, I served a mission, a service mission for my church, and went over to Tokyo, Japan, and that was a lot of fun. And then I came back and started, got married and was working. And as you said, I was a blue-collar worker working as a truck driver. I also worked in a warehouse and worked my way up to where the company I was working with was selling frozen food to convenience stores. They asked me, would you like to get into sales? And I said, well, is there more money there? Well, yeah, you get commission. You're going to make a lot of money. And I said, okay. So I took the challenge on, and I did. I built it up to be a a really good paying job and all that. And my wife and I were doing really well. We bought a house in West Jordan, and we had 2 kids and one on the way. But anyway, we had a good life, and I thought I had the American dream by the by the tail, and here we go.
Now, you mentioned to me before that there was a point in your life where you were very discouraged and almost suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
Take me to that point and kind of describe it to me and tell me how God got you through that.
Okay. Well, this was back when I was working at the frozen food place. I had been working there for a lot of years, and I'd worked my way up in the company, and we had over 70 salespeople, and I was number 2 at all times. There was always a guy out of Cedar City that I could never beat. But anyway, but I had built my territory to be one of the best in the company, and I was making a lot of money. Again, we had a brand new house, 2 brand new cars. My wife was able to quit her job and stay at home, and I felt like I've arrived. Mm-hmm. But then one day the boss calls me in, and this was right after we had just had our end of the year sales party, and I had just received my 3rd sales merit award for being in the top 10 in sales. And boss calls me in and says, "Brad, we need to talk." And I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to get a raise.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, honey, this is going to be so great. I go in there, and guess what he did? He cut my territory in half, which again cut my money in half. And this was back in the late 80s. Actually, this was in the early 90s when this happened. Yeah, it was 1992. And I was just devastated, and I begged and pleaded, "Please don't do this. Please don't do this," because I didn't know where else I could make that kind of money, because at the time I didn't have my degrees or anything. And so I was like, "Please don't do this. Please don't do this." And he said, "Well, I can make you a regional manager, and that'll pay you a little bit more." And I said, "Well, I'll take it." But I was just steadily going downhill fast. That things were, I wasn't able to pay my bills, and I just had to work out payments on everything. I'd had a car repossessed, and we lost our home. And next thing I know, I'm, in my in-laws' unfinished basement,
wow.
looking up at the ceiling, going, "What just happened here?" Mm-hmm. How did I go in 9 months from having it all to now nothing? And I'm like, what now? Mm-hmm. And it was like I couldn't get out of bed. I would attempt new things and nothing would happen. So I went from this thing of feeling like I was in total control of everything to in control of nothing. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Brad, you're depressed." And I just went, "That can't be me. No, I'm not depressed, doctor. I'm not." And he said, "Well, Brad, you're pretty bad." And I said, "All right, what do I need to do?" And he gave me some pills. I think it was Prozac at the time. And then I go home crying to my wife, going, I have no control. I got to take a pill. I was done. But my nature was, no, I'm going to conquer this. But it was like so many roller coasters. I went to a couple of different psychiatrists, a couple of different psychologists, and nothing I was doing was working. All they would do is tweak my medications or try a new medication, and I'd feel good for a little while, and then my body would get used to that. I'd try to quit it, and I would just crash. And finally, I just came to a point, and this is after about 2 years of this. I just prayed to God, and I said, "I'm done. I don't know what you expect of me. I asked for help, and this is, is the medicine the help? Is the, I don't want to do this anymore." And I'd actually made a plan to check out. I'll just put it that way. I was making a plan to take my life and be done with it. And well, anyway, I just had this little small voice come to me again saying, "Brad, give it one more shot. Give it one more shot." And so I said, okay, what am I going to do? So I had made up my mind. I'm going to study everything that I can get my hands on for 6 months. And if nothing changes, then I'm done. But if things change, then so be it. During that 6 months of studying and looking at everything I could possibly do in different avenues and things like that, I discovered some pretty cool stuff. And it just really turned my life around. And I started to see things differently. I started to see how people are. And then I realized that a lot of the depression that I was having was tied to people relations, I know I had abandonment issues at the time. I still joke around and say that anytime I hire an employee that I really like, I sit them down and I say, you do know I have abandonment issues, right? So please don't quit. Anyway, so I'll use that for fun. But I realized I had all this stuff, but I was able to overcome it and just really see, again, what people's true needs are. And anyway, I just saw these people who had these desires but just didn't know what to do with them and all this. It was just like this, my eyes of understanding were opened. And after that, I just made a commitment to start teaching these principles to other people. And guess what? They would have the same results I would. And I'm like, okay, again, thank you for letting me go through that, Father. I mean, at the time when I'm going through it, obviously I don't want to be here.
Yeah,
but now that I've been through a lot of these challenges, it's good to be able to look back and go, you know what? If I hadn't have gone through that, I wouldn't have this knowledge I have right now that I can help people with. And so therefore, that's
there you go. That's amazing.
Yeah, but that's what happened. So here I am.
What a journey. So finish telling me really quick the end of that story of how you ended up becoming interested in being a counselor and how your life pivoted that way, and if this was an easy thing to pivot on or a hard thing.
Well, then all of a sudden I got asked to go and volunteer at a place called the Utah Boys Ranch. Right now it's Westridge Academy, so there's a free plug there for Westridge. We work with them. And so
tell us what this was.
It is a residential treatment center. It's a full-time stay for kids, for troubled teens. And so they would be pulled out of their homes, and instead of going to juvenile detention or to youth prison, they would go here and actually receive treatment. And so that's what it was all about. Well, I was just asked to go out there and volunteer and play football with the boys and just talk to them in the evenings, just have something to do. Well, I ended up enjoying it quite a bit, getting to know the boys, and then all of a sudden, about 6 weeks into this, I had one of the therapists come to me and says, "Are you Brad Neufeld?" And I says, "Yeah." And they said, "We want you to stop talking to these boys."
What?
And I'm like, "Well, isn't that why you have me here?" And they said, "Well, you're screwing up their treatment plan." And I'm like, "What the heck is a treatment plan? I don't know." I don't know what the heck a treatment plan is. And so I didn't think much of it. But then a couple of weeks later, I had another therapist come to me and say, "Brad, you have got to stop talking to these kids." And I said, "What am I saying?" They're asking me questions and I'm answering them. They'd ask me stuff like, "What would you do in this situation?" Well, here's what I did, when I was younger. And a lot of it had to do with teenager issues. They would even come to me and say, "Well, man, when I get home here, I am 15, but I've got a friend. I'm going to run away and I'm going to go." And I said, "No, don't do that. Your family's the only thing solid you're ever going to have in this life. Friends come and go. And I know this from experience, dude. And so don't do it. Go home, get right with your family, do everything you can to stay home," and just general stuff like that. And I was like, going, what am I saying that's so offensive and everything? And they just said, well, the therapist had said, "Well, this kid tells me that you're helping him more than I am, and you're not a licensed therapist." And I'm going, and trust me, I'm not knocking the treatment world at all. I work in the treatment world, so. But this was the launch pad for me. I had went home that very night and was just laying in bed going, well, maybe all this happened to me for a reason. You ask how I got into this. Sorry for the long answer,
No.
but it felt like I needed to give you some dialogue to help, to help you understand it. And so after I realized this is what I wanted to do, because I found so much joy in it, I decided, all right, I'm going to go back to college. And I wanted to be a therapist at the time, but then things changed. But anyway, that's how I got it started anyway.
Very good. So you went back to college. You figured out this is where you want to be.
Yes.
And you made it happen. And I'm sure that probably wasn't easy, being that you already had a wife and a couple kids. Did you had to transition into that slowly? Did you keep working? How did you do that?
I found out that you had to have a master's either in social work or in before you could become a licensed therapist. And I looked at the starting rate of a licensed therapist, and it was only $23,000 a year at the time. And I was already making $48,000 to $50,000 a year selling frozen food. And so I'm like, well, So I'm going to go get in all this debt only to start at half the salary. Oh, great. And so my mind just kept thinking, how in the world am I going to do this? I need to be able to make money and be able to do this. And if I have to make more money on one side to subsidize what I'm doing over here, then that's what I got to do. And so I had talked to my wife, and we just made the determination that I was going to be a clinician. And first of all, I decided, you know what? Let me set a goal here. I want to be a clinical psychologist. I pictured myself in a white coat at a hospital, Dr. Neufeld. And so that was the path that I took. And so, but as I got into it a little bit, things just were different to me. I mean, the kids nowadays were just so different. I was thinking back on my life thinking, man, when my dad spanked me or I got disciplined when I was younger, I stopped doing the thing that I was being punished for. But these kids today, oh my gosh, they're resilient. They just say, you know what, I don't care what you do, I'm going to do this anyway. I'll figure out a way to do it. And they would, even if they would get lots of consequences or whatnot, you'd take stuff away, they'd still do what they wanted to do. And I'm like, how do you work with this? And it didn't quite fit with all of the diagnoses that I was studying at the time. And so I had heard a talk from one of my spiritual leaders, and he had talked about how the spirits that are coming into this world now have more determination than any generation in history. And because of God's plan and what's about to happen, they need that determination to get through. And I said, oh boy, that was a lot of validation for what I've been feeling. And
right.
Like, wow, okay, but still, what do you do with it? But he gave kind of an answer in a way. He said, don't beat it out of them. They need that to get through what's going to happen. But what he did say is, if you take them by the hand, lead them, guide them, and show them the way, they will follow.
Interesting.
And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I just set the psychology aside, and I thought, what does this mean? I had nothing to go on other than that. And so I decided, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to ask these kids. I'm just going to talk to them openly. And I talked to well over 1,000 teenagers, well, me and a team of people. And we just asked them one simple question: what do you want from adults?
And what did they say?
Oh, the answers were incredible. Again, once we got through all of I just want them to leave me alone. I just want to do what I want to. I just want them to give me money and stay out of my life. After we got past all that, I said, no. This is your chance. And they were getting things like they wanted to know they were loved. They wanted to know that they wanted somebody they could look up to. They wanted somebody they could trust. They wanted to be adventurous. They wanted, believe it or not, they wanted structure and consistency. And I was like blown away by all that. They wanted validation. There were so many things, and I put this into a model that I call the 10 things that all youth really want. And I am writing a book on that, by the way.
Oh, yay. I can't wait for that to come out.
That'll be coming out. I wanted to write it 10 years ago, but or 12 years ago, but I had some health issues, of which we can talk about later if you want to, that kind of kept me from finishing the book. But I'm kind of glad that happened. I've learned so much in the last 12 years to add to that book that needs to be in there. Now, after I had heard these things from the kids, it made me look at things in a whole different perspective. One of the boards I sat on down in St. George, Utah, was Washington County CAGE, C-A-G-E, which was an acronym for Community Awareness Gang Education. While I was giving a few speeches at various high schools down there, and I mentioned the gang thing, a lady approached me afterwards and said, hey, we'd like you to sit on a task force. We're kind of concerned that all these gang members are moving into the St. George area and kind of setting up their territories and all this stuff, and we don't know what to do. The police department doesn't know what to do. We're this small, quiet community. What's going on? We think you could help us. Well, they kept asking me the question, why do you want to join a gang? What's the attraction? What's the pull? It's obviously dangerous. It's obviously all these bad things that could happen. Why do they want to join? And I was literally racking my brain going, what in the world why did I want to join? For protection. That was it. That was all that kept coming to me. Well, I had already had this model put together of the 10 things that all youth want, and it was sitting beside my computer. And I happened to look over late one night and looked at it, and I went, oh my gosh, all 10 of those things are in a gang setting. All 10 of them.
So they can either get it in the home environment, or they can get it from the gang environment.
So when you hear the fact that we're fighting for the hearts and minds of our kids, we truly are. But again, I'm a parent. I have 6 kids. I've gone through very similar things that all the other parents. You know, what do they say? A prophet in his own country is not respected. I mean, that's just the way it is.
You're just dad to your kids, right?
Right. So many people say, "Oh, your kids are so lucky they have you." Well, guess what? I've had to send my kids to counselors. You know? They don't want to listen to me either, but it's so funny how they come back to me later. Well, the counselor's just saying the same things you are. But well, if I had to spend the money for you to figure that out, then so be it. We're
Oh, that's funny.
So anyway, does that answer the question?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you ended up helping these at-risk youth, basically,
Yes.
and setting up a council and using your 10 steps to help make this a successful program down in St. George, Utah.
Yes.
So tell me how you were doing at this time inside. Were you struggling at all? Were you excited with your success? Where were you?
Well, at the time, I was a public speaker. I had come up with the Winning Mindset series, and so at the time, I was doing that, and I was making really good money. I was making, I was speaking and making money, and thinking, again, American dreams here, living in a nice house close to a golf course, thinking we've made it and all this stuff, but. People would pay money to come see me, and one of my greatest needs is I want to make a difference.
Right.
And so what was happening is I would do these workshops, and I'd pump people up, and they would feel all like, "Oh my gosh, Brad, thanks. Oh, I'm so pumped. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to rock the world." But then I'd call them 6 months later, and nothing had changed. And Tamara, it was just eating me alive. And because some of them would say stuff like, "I spent my last $500 coming to your workshop, just looking for answers." And I was like, I can't do this. I can't, I felt, good that I was at least giving them some good information. But I thought, if I'm not making a change with them, then what, anyway, I've got to think of something different. Well, at the time, I was presented the opportunity to sit on the Western Region Youth Council with the Department of Workforce Services, and they were in the process of developing a program to increase the effectiveness of their programs that they had. So they didn't want me to come in and be another therapeutic program. They said, "We already have therapists. We're already working with Southwest Centers and a few other places down here. So we want you to use our therapists." And we're like, "Great. Well, the mentoring works really good hand in hand with the therapy." And we showed them how, and so we got this 5-year contract with the state, and we had phenomenal results. I mean,
awesome.
What we would do is the therapist would come up with the treatment plan, and then we, as mentors, would work really closely with them and help the kids actually do the things that they wanted them to do, so get results.
So was this kind of the same thing that you were just talking about, how you'd pump people up, so the therapist would pump people up, and then you were actually helping them implement.
Yeah, exactly.
You were the rubber that met the road.
Yeah, because again, they'd walk out of the therapist's office going, "Oh, I feel so good right now," but then they were like, "Now what?
How do I do it?
How do I do this?" "Well, they told me to go talk to my teacher, but I don't know how to talk to my teacher." Well, this is what you would say to your teacher. Well, are you going to go talk to him today? Well, maybe. Then they wouldn't the next day, and it's like, "Well, are you going to talk to him today?" "I don't know." And I said, "Well, come on, let's go."
So you just take them
down? Oh, yeah, we
there.
just take them right there. It was very, very much interactive. We even went in their homes, and that was an interesting thing, too. I mean, I don't know how much time we have, but I have a really cool story. Can I share it really quickly?
Yeah, go
okay.
right ahead. I'd love to hear it.
There was this one young girl who was 14 years old, and she seemed so ambitious, she had a lot of good ideas and a lot of big dreams and things like that, and we would work with her at the high school, and she would never do any of the assignments we would give her, and we're like, "What is going on here? Do you really, you sound so much like you want this to happen." "Oh, I do. And so after about a couple of months of that, we're like, okay, progress isn't being made. She's not, again, doing the steps that need to be done for the program, and so we might have to drop her and all that. And I just happened to be in their neighborhood, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop by and see them. So I stop, knock on the door, and she answers the door and just opens the door about 2 inches and looks out. And she goes, "Brad, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I just wanted to stop by and say hi and see how you're doing." Just then, 2 little young toddlers come running out in their diapers and running all over the porch. And she hurried up and stepped outside and closed the door behind her. And it was right then that I knew, all right, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And I just told her, I says, you know what, tell me what's going on. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm not the police. I'm not here to arrest anybody. I want to help. What can I do? Well, then her mother comes to the door at that very time and starts talking to me, and I could tell she was intoxicated. She was wasted. And I said, hey, ma'am, can I come in for a minute? Oh, I don't know. And so I kind of said, well, come, let's talk for a minute, okay? Mm-hmm. I go in there, and there's two full-grown men just passed out on the couches, and I could tell they were doing stuff they shouldn't have been doing.
Right.
And I was just going, no wonder. Mm-hmm. And on my way home after I left there, I had talked to the mom. I said, do you want things to change in your life? And she was crying. She says, yes. I said, well, can we meet tomorrow? Go ahead and sober up. Let's talk tomorrow, kind of a thing. And anyway, I talked to the girl, and we made a plan to get the mom into treatment and get her, the help that she needed, and get her. She had really bad self-confidence issues. Obviously, she was just taking in whoever she could to. So she wasn't feeling lonely or whatever, but it turned out to be a really awesome, positive experience. The mom just really turned her life around, and this girl was able to do some great things. But that got me wondering, how many other families are going through this same thing? And so that's when we started an in-home portion of the program. And so that way we could see actually what's going on. And it really worked good in tandem because we could see everything. Not that we were spies or anything. And again, we were there with no judgment, none whatsoever. Yeah. We're here to help. That's it. And we're not here to tell you what to do. You're a grown adult. You have the right to raise your kids the way that you want to, but we need to understand how you want to raise them so that we can help support you with your kids. So it ended up being a very successful model. But we had worked with close to 1,600 kids and had about a 93% success rate getting kids through high school and onto either a career or into post-secondary education.
Fantastic.
It was just a phenomenal program. And so, anyway, that's...
There you go. So, I know you've told me before that as successful as this program was, it didn't end up sticking around, unfortunately. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How did that affect you?
Oh, it affected me pretty hard because things were going really well, and it just felt like this is it, because I had been working so many years to build this vision that I had of genuinely helping people and making the difference is which is at my core value, and it just felt like it was just ripped out from under me, and I was just like, okay, now what? Right. Next thing I know, we're moving up from Hurricane, St. George area, up to the Tooele area to start something else. And I'm like, now what? Well, we had ran into a gentleman who owned some property and had some money, and we were going to start an inpatient facility ourselves so that I could still stay in the youth business. But then after working on that for a year and getting all the engineering done and getting the place ready to break ground, the owner of the property has a heart attack, goes into the hospital, and we didn't think he was going to live. But 8 weeks later, he comes home and he says, Brad, I just don't have the energy to finish this off. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to do. What can I help you? Help you make the transition here? And I'm like, oh, boy.
So you've kind of hit rock bottom again.
Yep, and this was in 2005, and after the contract had ended, and I'm like, now what? Well, it just kept resonating in my mind. We had discovered some really effective techniques, and I just can't let this go. There's got to be a way to recreate this, but the downside was we didn't have the funding to do it. And so that's when Affinity Guidance Services was born. But anyway, we were able to recreate the majority of the program, but still the funding was always a challenge, but we've been able to figure out ways here and there to keep it going. And so that's what happened. So yeah, rock bottom, not knowing where I'm going to turn, and I was thinking, I don't know anything else to do. Through God's help, I was able to get that, get it cranked up and get it going again.
Brad, so you've worked a lot with teens that are at risk. You know what they want because you did that survey.
Yes.
For parents out there that have teens who are struggling, what little bits of advice would you give?
Yes, as a parent, you want two things for your kids, and I find this consistent no matter what culture I'm working with, no matter what level of parents I'm working with. They want two things for their kids. They want them to be safe, and they want them to be happy. And in many cases, they want more for them than what they had. And so a parent's drive is to provide that. And it, again, common, I'm a parent, I've been through this. I think I know better for your life than you do. And the moment you can go, you know what, maybe they know better for their life, especially when they start to mature and stuff like that. No, they're not going to have the habits and skills and things that you've learned, but you also have to understand is they don't have the experience either. And so they need to get the experience. If they say, I want to be a doctor, let them support them in being a doctor. Guess what? They're not going to, if they don't want to do it, they'll find out really quickly that's not the life for them.
Right.
But if you try to stand in their way and not let them do that, you're going to get nothing but friction. Does that make sense? Because like I'll be working with a kid and the parent will say to me, oh, my kid just wants to be a rap artist. That's all he thinks about. He wants to be a rapper. Let him be a rapper. No, I don't want him to be a rapper. Trust me, he'll figure it out. And so I'll go in there and as I'm coaching the kid, I'll say, let me show you what it takes to be a rapper. I know exactly what you got to do. Here's how much you got to practice. Here's how much you got to get out there and do free. You're going to have to work for free for 2 or 3 years, getting your message out there, getting recordings done, all this stuff. You're probably going to have to work a part-time job and earn money so you can burn that CD and all this stuff. And it's amazing. 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is, whatever time it takes, after they go through that, they go, I don't want to do that. And then they'll come back and say, you know what? I'm really interested in science. I think I want to be a whatever. And the parents just go, what just happened here? But see, get rid of the fight. That's the big thing there. Ask them what they want. Now, yes, you're going to run across things. Well, I want to grow marijuana on the moon. You ask me why. I've heard it all, guys. I've heard it all. There's nothing that would surprise me. So that's the biggest thing, Tamara. Number one is work on your rapport with them. Just get to know them. Stop, take a step back. Stop trying to force them to do specific things and just get to know them. Even if they're behind in their schooling and stuff, that's very important that you just don't worry about that for right now. Just reestablish that rapport. Find out what they want. And help them with it. And help them with that. Okay. Again, if anybody needs advice on that, you can get a hold of me free, and I can tell you the experiences and stuff I've had. I'll give you some information later.
So building a rapport with your kids is a really important thing to do in helping them pursue their dreams. And what if you're still struggling with your teen? What is the most important thing to do then?
Number one, ask for help. That's the biggest thing. Again, a lot of times we think that, this is what we find out after the fact, of course. Parents, their kids, they look at it that their kids are a reflection of them. And I understand that. And so they think, well, I don't want anybody knowing what's going on in my household. I don't want anybody in my business and all that stuff. Again, totally human trait. That's perfectly fine. But in these cases, you're dealing with something. You're dealing with God's most complex creatures, and they have free will. So it's not something. It's okay to ask for advice because you're dealing with, I'll just call it an entity that has passions, desires. They want something, and these things that they want are probably different than what you want for them. But that's the biggest thing. But ask for help. If your child needs to go to a hospital or something like that, it's okay. Don't worry about what other people are thinking and all that. And there's nothing wrong with asking for that help. And here's the thing about this too. I mentioned earlier in the interview, I've had to send my kids to counselors. That statement that I made about a prophet being unpopular in his own country is true. There's a magic to that third party. And even though everything that we teach at our program is the exact same thing that you're teaching, they need to hear that from a third party. Because right now, all they're hearing it from is you're the enemy, because my friends are saying something different. But if they hear it enough times from different people, then all of a sudden it's, this is it.
Starts to click. Very good.
So that's the biggest thing. And also, last thing here, as far as parenting skills and things like that, I gave up a long time ago looking for specific techniques that work. Why that is because every kid is different. It's okay to have a structure in your home. As a matter of fact, the parenting model that we teach, we call it parenting with flexible consistency. Yeah, that'll keep you up at night. But it's that way for a reason. There is a way that you can have a set structure, but yet have the flexibility within to deal with the different personalities. And so establish that and be consistent. Consistency is the key. Do what you say you're going to do. There's too many parents out there. I like to use this for an example. My wife used to say this all the time, when she'd get really mad. I'm going to rip your leg off and I'm going to beat you with it. I'm like, honey, stop saying that, because there's no way you're going to follow through on that. But you have to follow through on what you say. So therefore, take the time to decide what the consequence is going to be prior to talking to your kid about it. You have to follow through on what you say. If you don't, that's where you lose trust with your kids. They know you're not going to follow through, so why even bother? But if they know you're serious, then consistency is the key.
Very good. That's wonderful. Well, let's take a short break, and when we come back, will you tell us a little bit more about some of those health challenges and
absolutely.
what you learned from those?
Absolutely.
How many of you out there feel like your life is chaotic, crazy, and completely awful compared to the norm? What if I were to tell you that you are normal for you? I am so excited to announce that my book, Normal for Me by Tamara K. Anderson, will be released April of 2019 to celebrate Autism Awareness Month. This book took me 10 years to write, and I share 20 years worth of lessons learned in my life detours, including being in a car accident and having 2 of my children diagnosed on the autism spectrum. In this book, I share the secrets of how I made it from despair to peace with God's help. I invite you to check out my website, TamaraKAnderson.com, and sign up for my twice-a-month newsletter. Doing this was going to give you the inside scoop on how you can get a free electronic copy of my book during the month of April. So sign up today and hope on.
And we're back. This is Tamara K. Anderson interviewing Brad J. Neufeld, and we were going to talk a little bit about some of the health challenges that you have struggled with and what those have taught you.
Yeah.
So why don't you jump right in and tell us about that?
Well, it was kind of an interesting thing at the time when my health issues started to hit. I really have lived a very healthy life. I never get sick. I always had a lot of drive to do things and to accomplish things. And then I'm trying to think of what year it was. It was back in about 2008. I started having these headaches in the spring, and they were really bad. I just felt all this pressure up behind my left eye, and I'd go to the doctor, and they'd just say, "Well, Brad, you're stressed. You're going through a lot of hard things right now." And I says, "Well, yeah," but they would prescribe me muscle relaxers or whatever to help me with this. And so, but then the headaches just kept being there, and I kept going in, and they'd say, "Well, Brad, that's all we can narrow it down to is you're just stressed out." Well, then I made it through the summer and just tried to relax, tried to take some time for myself and whatnot. But then in the fall, things started to get a little worse, and I went in, but then I just kept working. And I went to the doctor, and again, same old. And I said, "Something's got to be wrong. Absolutely has got to be wrong." And he said, "Well, let's just do this. I just think you have a really bad migraine, but I'm going to give you a shot of something that's going to make you sleep all weekend long." I have no idea what it was.
Oh, gosh.
I'm assuming Demerol, but anyway. He just said, "I'm going to give you a shot." And this was on Friday. And he says, "If you still have this headache on Monday, come back in and see me." And I went to the doctor, got the shot. My wife drove me home. I slept for 4 hours, and I woke up, and it was just like my head was, and I was like, and my wife says, "Just clear your slate for the weekend. You're staying home all weekend. You're going to sleep." And so I did. I stayed in bed. But Monday morning, it was like, no.
Still a lot of pain.
But me, I was stubborn when it came to medical things. Just very stubborn. And I went to the doctor, and he says, Brad, get to the hospital right now. And I said, doctor, come on, there's got to be something else. I don't need to go to the hospital. And at the time, I don't even think I had insurance. And I just, I was like going, oh my gosh, I can't afford this. I don't want to do this. And things weren't going well financially. And he actually threatened me. He said, if you don't go now, I'm going to treat this as if you're wanting to kill yourself, and I'm going to call the cops, and they will admit you. And I said, okay, I'll go. So I went down to the hospital, and after 4 hours of testing, I was like, okay. The doctor comes in. He says, Brad, there's something in your head there, and we don't know what it is.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Even then, I wasn't too scared or anything. I was just like, oh, let's just see what happens. But he just said, Brad, we've got to get you up to the University of Utah Hospital. He says, we don't have the equipment to do this, but they're going to have to do something. There's something in there. We don't know what it is. And so I said, all right, well, when do I go? Monday? Do I go up tomorrow? Do I go? And he goes, no, you go down there right now. Matter of fact, we've already ordered an ambulance for you. And
ambulance?
And I said, no, I'm not going to take an ambulance. If I'm, unless you need to strap me to a bed or something, I'd really rather not do that. And they said, well, you guys go, and you go now. And on the way, I just said, let's stop home. They're probably going to keep me overnight for some observation or something. Let's go get some clothes. And I wasn't too nervous. And then we go up to the University of Utah Hospital, went into the emergency room, and there was like 150 people in the emergency. I mean, it was just packed. And if you've ever been to an emergency room,
Yes.
you know, the waiting and all that stuff. And I just thought, we're going to be here all dang night. I just want to get checked out. I want to go home. No sooner than my butt hit the chair, they said, Brad Neufeld, please come to the front desk. They checked me in immediately, and I just went, that's when I got scared. Something's not right.
Right.
So I went in, and the doctors were like, well, we're going to have to drill some holes in your head. And I'm like going, what is happening to me here? And they said, we got to figure out what it is in there, Brad. We're seeing it on the CT scan and all this, but we don't know what it is. And said it could be an abscess, which is an infection. And I said, okay. And so they prepped me for surgery and all that whatnot. And well, after 4 hours of surgery, and after I came out, and I was looking around the room, and my eyesight was gone. I mean, all I saw was just this big old blur. And I was
Really?
like, doctors, what's going on? I was just scared. I asked them what happened, and they said, well, we ended up having to cut a piece of your skull out to get, there was an infection up there. There was a strep virus, and it was growing, and it was actually pushing my brain forward.
Oh,
And so that's the pressure was there. And I was like, okay, but I can't see. I said, am I going to get that back? And they were silent. And I was like, doctor, please tell me yes or no. Am I going to get my sight back? And they says, Brad, we don't know.
oh my!
We don't know. And I was like, I was crying again, just what am I doing wrong here? Why am I going through this? Why does this have to happen to me? And the only thing that could come to my mind was God is in charge. And I just had to repeat that over and over and over again. That was the only thing that was bringing me comfort. God's in charge. Let me just, because I had just gotten to the point where I was building my business back up, and it was like, what, another blow? Here we go. And so after the surgery, I was in there for the rest of the week, and my eyesight had gotten back to at least I don't even know how to put it. Everything was still blurry, but I could at least tell who was standing in front of me. Well, if I knew the person, I would know who it was.
Right.
And so they sent me home from the hospital, and then I had to get injections twice a day. I had to go into the hospital twice a day to get these injections of antibiotics, because the infection was all over the place. It was all
The
up in
strep infection?
strep. It was everywhere in my body.
Oh.
Well, after being home for about 2 weeks, all of a sudden I got this really, really bad headache, and the back of my neck got really tense, and I just started throwing up, and I was like, I was in so much pain. We ended up having to call the EMTs in, and they did take me by ambulance back to my hospital there in Tooele. And I get there, and they're just trying to get me out of pain, and I remember feeling the pain so bad that I was asking them to kill me because I was done. Nothing would knock me out. Nothing. I mean, it was so intense, and I guess they finally gave me some morphine, and they're like, are you in pain still? Yes, but I don't care. so, so the beauty of modern medicine. So, but they rushed me by ambulance back up to the University of Utah, and come to find out I developed spinal meningitis because the infection had broke loose in my brain and went down into my spine, and that was so painful. I couldn't move my head at all. If I did, it just, and again, no painkillers would help at all. It was just, I just had to sit there with my head in one spot. If I moved to the left even just a quarter of an inch, it just put this shock down there. But anyway, after being in there and having 5 IVs running in me 24/7 and all these liquids pumping through me, every day there was progress. I was able to move my head right and left without pain, and then but not forward and backward. And then the next day I was a little bit better, and the next day was a little bit better, and then finally it all went down into my lower back. And after 7 days of that, I was able to get off all of the medications and everything. But that's when they told me all the dangerous stuff that could have happened and should have happened. And they said, Brad, you shouldn't be here. I just went, well, thanks.
So let me ask you, when you lost your sight and all of that to me seems like it would have been pretty discouraging.
Mm-hmm.
And also spinal meningitis, so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
How were you able to get through those tough times? Were there lessons you learned about God and your relationship with Him? What? Absolutely.
Little things, little promptings. I would learn to ask different questions.
Tell me about
to
that.
God. I would still hang on to my mantra. God is in charge. But I would ask God, what can I do right now to alleviate this pain that I'm having? And I would literally get little promptings. Shift your left hip.
Really?
And I'd shift my left hip and I'd feel a release, and I'd be like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
And then that would be good for a couple of hours, and then it would start to be painful again, and I'd start moving around. I'm going, Brad, it worked once, try it again. Father in heaven, what can I do right now to relieve this pain? Is there anything I can do? And there was a couple of times it said, nope, you're just going to have to endure, but I'll help you through it. And I would feel that, just those warm arms around me that, nope, everything's going to be okay. But it was amazing, just little things like that. And it just told me God will help us with anything, no matter how ridiculously small it is, if we'll just humble ourselves and ask,
Wow, that is powerful.
And that was just, anyway, just what a... The other thing, too, was my business had been going, just taking off. This was, like I told you, I just got it started in 2006, and I didn't have any money to start the business with, so I just started off doing individual sessions and whatnot. When the time came for me to, really launch the business and looking at hiring some other people, that's when I went in with my head surgery, and I just realized I can't do anything now. And so I said, Father, I don't know how I'm going to provide for my family. I can't see. I don't know where else to go here. And I just got this warm feeling of, Brad, I'm right here. I'm right here. Everything's going to be okay. And it was so intense, Tamara, to see that more actually got done for my business through other people, obviously, with me laying there on my back.
Wow.
Than me working my tail off all day, and so... Again, just a lot of little things. People would call me up, Brad, what can I do to support you? What do you need? Do you still have clients? Yes. Can I go see them? Can I talk to them? What can I do? And I was just like, other therapists I was working with, and I'm just like, has this happened? And they would give me encouragement. Brad, when things get better, we're right here for you. We're going to help you launch this thing. And I was just like, take a deep breath, Brad. Everything's going to be okay. It's in His time, not mine. So.
Wow.
Anyway.
So you really felt that God blessed you not only with the comfort through Him, but through other people as well.
Absolutely.
Earthly angels.
Absolutely. And that's another big thing that I heard, that I learned too through this whole process, because I would always pray to God, give me money, give me money, give me money. And I'd be like, no, ask for the things that you need. And I would ask for the things that I need. And then God works through other people. There was one time when my wife and I, again, things weren't going really well. It was just before Christmas when we were down in Hurricane, and I knew I had some money coming in about 3 weeks from a loan that I had closed just randomly, but we had nothing. We had no gas in the car, no food in the pantry, and I just thought, what in the world? And I just had a prompting come to me, tell God what you need. And I said, Father, I need enough money to get me through the next 3 weeks until I get this other money. And I asked my wife to make a list. How much money do we need? And she said, I think with $100, I think we can get through this. And 5 minutes later, we get a knock on our door. And it happened to be, my wife's best friend. And she said, I had a prompting. I'm supposed to bring this to you. My husband had just got a raise, and she says, don't you dare turn it down. You take it, and we're leaving. And she opens the envelope, and it was $100.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a sweet story. So you learned the power of praying specifically
for your needs. Money's
needs.
so general. God doesn't care about money. He doesn't need that. It's about the things that we need for our well-being. So
Yeah. Oh, what a sweet, sweet story. There is something to the power of prayer. I've seen it in my life, and learning to ask the right questions you mentioned before, and specifics are important as well.
Yeah.
And I've seen that power in my life, especially with my kiddos on the autism spectrum. There were nights that I remember one night in particular where our son Nathan he was awake at 2 a.m. and would not go back to sleep, and was inconsolably screaming, and nothing we could do would make him stop. And my husband and I tag teamed it in and out of that bedroom for the next several hours. And I remember finally, I mean, you deal with something like that for several hours and you're just worn out. I mean, you didn't get much sleep, but just listening to the screaming for that long was just so hard. And I finally just told God, I said, I don't know what else to pray for.
Yeah.
I prayed for everything I can think of, and I don't know what to pray for. And all of a sudden the thought came, pray for angels.
There you go.
And so I began, like, who do I know that's dead?
That
But
would
I
be
did.
sympathetic towards my cause.
I started praying that my grandma and grandpa and my husband's grandparents would all come and help out, because I didn't know what else to pray for. And I'll be darned if the sweetest feeling didn't come into that room. And he started calming down.
Wow.
And so sometimes when we don't know what to pray for, telling God, I don't know.
I don't know what to pray for. Yeah, be honest with him. Tell him.
I've prayed for everything I can think of. But listening to those little whisperings when we're struggling and in so much pain where we don't know what else to do, or we're just so discouraged, because God really is there.
Yeah. Yes, he is. And this was, to add to what was going on, this was around the same time that I went through all that with, when I was making all the money and stuff like that. I had a little bit of ungrateful attitude in such a way that I didn't have much empathy or sympathy for people who weren't doing well or of minimal means. And I know that people who know me now go, how could you ever feel that way? I just, because I would do whatever it took. If I had to work 70, 80 hours a week, doggone it, I'd do it. And I would go without sleep, and I would bust my tail to provide for my family and everything. When my income was cut in half and I lost everything, and I started to go, why can't I make this money that I've been accustomed to making? And I was getting really good at putting on a face, putting on, nothing's wrong in the Neufeld family and all of this. And at this particular time, again, just before Christmas, we were 3 months behind on our rent. My car had just blown up. The only car we had, the head gasket blew. And so it's sitting out in the driveway. And I, went to church on Sunday and just happy-go-lucky Brad, nothing's wrong, everything's fine. How you doing, Brad? Oh, I'm doing great. All of a sudden, our bishop calls me in, and he says, Brother Neufeld, there's something we need to talk about. I said, okay, what would you like me to do, Bishop? And he says, no, there's something you need to tell me, and we're not leaving this room until you do. Bishop, there's nothing wrong. I'm fine. Everything's good. Whatever little challenges we have, we'll fix it. We'll work it out. And he just said, Brother Neufeld, we're not leaving this room. And by then, I just knew I was done. I knew he's not going to let me go here. And so I thought, okay. And so I just lost it again, just started crying, Bishop, I don't know what to do. And he said, well, let me ask you a question, Brad. He says, when you think of pride, what do you think of? I said, well, I think of somebody who's arrogant, who's got their nose up in the air while looking down on me at the same time. And he goes, no, you got it all wrong. Pride is when you need help and you won't ask for it. And that was a turning point in my life there, and I always do everything I can to do it. But sometimes, guess what? Our the amount of effort that we're able to and capable of putting in may not be sufficient to produce the thing that we need. And that's when other people will come in. But have the humility to accept the gift no matter where it comes from, because I know that's another human trait too. We do want to do it all ourselves. We don't want to be beholden to nobody. And when somebody does something for us, we have this tendency to feel like, well, now I got to pay them back. No, you don't. God answers your prayers through other people. When those things come to you, simply take it, no matter if it's a compliment, no matter if it's something physical, take it and say thank you. And then when you get the opportunity, get on your knees and thank Father in heaven for it, because he's the one that brought it to you.
Yeah.
And I very much learned that over the years. So don't question it. Wherever it comes from, let it happen.
What a beautiful lesson to learn. And sometimes these lessons are hard to learn because we learn them in the most trying times of our lives, don't we?
And trust me, I punched a lot of pillows. I mean, don't think that this just, it sounds so calming, but oh no, I just, all right, I know you're right, God, but I don't want it.
We're a little bit stubborn sometimes, aren't we?
Yes.
Well, and especially when life doesn't seem to be going the way we thought it was going to go.
Exactly.
And
that's the key word there. Is we thought it was going to be this way, but he has a better way.
Yes, and it is learning to trust that better way. You mentioned that you also learned to ask the question, what can I learn from this?
Yes.
Tell me about that story.
Well, again, years of experience of fighting with God, wondering why he was punishing me, and why don't I feel like I'm doing everything that you're asking me to do and nothing's working out? Why are you doing this to me? Well, then I had heard I can't remember the motivational speaker's name, but anyway, I went to a lot of motivational workshops just to learn little principles here that would fit with my personality and stuff. And so this particular gentleman had said that life teaches us lessons. And the lessons are going to get harder and harder until we learn the lesson that the universe has in store for us. Well, I choose to call that higher power that he called the universe. I choose to call that God, so I just put that in there. Okay, he's trying to teach me something. And the speaker also went on to say that once we learn that lesson, that trial disappears. And I thought, I'm going to test this. So I already understood I already had my philosophy on asking specific questions and things. So I thought, what's a good question that I could ask my Father in heaven to get specific answers? And that's what I came up with. And so the question that just rang in my mind was, okay, Father in heaven is definitely trying to teach me something here. The quicker I learn the lesson, the better. So instead of getting angry, I see the issue, I see the challenge that's in front of me, the wall, whatever it is, stop and say, okay, what would you like me to learn from this? What can I learn from this? And I try to learn it as quick as I can. And so it definitely brings me more peace of mind, because now I'm focused on the journey versus on, again, the issue. So that's where that came from.
So smart. So you learned to change those questions of, why does God hate me?
Yep.
And he keeps giving me all these challenges and my life keeps changing. It's not turning out the way I want, to what can I learn from this?
Correct. Yep.
That's awesome.
And again, you got to listen to your promptings, though. I always have to make that, because we do get promptings. Think about it. Anybody that's listening to us, you get promptings all day long, but what do we have a tendency to do? No, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. You got to do what you're prompted.
So when you get a prompting, do you think it's just like a little thought that pops into your head? Is that how you would best describe a prompting?
Yes, and I'll get just a thought, random thought will come in my head. And I still to this day, do I do it right away? There's always a pause, unless, of course, life's on the line or something. Yeah, I'm going to jump in. But there's always a pause and go, okay, did that come from me, from some random thought I was thinking, or is this a prompting? And I'll just go through it. Is this something I need right now? Is it something that if I do this thing that I'm being prompted, will it make a difference in my life? And if I get a warm feeling on that and my gut tells me, you know what, this is, then I'll say, okay, Father, I've been given this prompting. Is this something I should do? And sure enough, I'll get that warm feeling and I do it.
Very good.
And
no,
so,
that's perfect.
but no matter what comes to my head, that's my process now. But that's after years and years and years of fighting it. Why would you want me to go talk to Jim down the street? I have nothing to do with Jim down the street. Go talk to Jim down the street, and then you get down to Jim down the street, and he's not home. And then you go, well, see, I was no, go talk to Jim. Then you go to Jim, and Jim says, I don't even know why you're here. Why do you want to talk to me? I'm like, I don't know, Jim. I just had a feeling I'd come and talk to you. And then you walk away from the situation going, well, that stunk. Why did I even want to? Maybe I even made things worse. But then 2 weeks later, Jim calls, Brad, I got something I could really use your help with. And I'm going, okay, what is it? But would he have called me if I had not taken that initial prompting to go down and make that connection? No, he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So.
Isn't that interesting? And so sometimes the promptings will come to go and impact the lives of others.
Absolutely.
And so if you're doing it for good, to follow those promptings and talk it through with God. I liked how you had that conversation with God in your head. Well, here I'm feeling this. Is this really what I should be doing?
Yeah.
So talking it through with God, having that constant prayer in your mind and in your heart of what you should do, especially when you get these thoughts. So let me ask you, has there been a favorite Bible verse that has become meaningful to you through all these years of ups and downs all over the place?
Definitely. Well, definitely in Psalms, the book of Psalms in the Old Testament, chapter 46, I believe it's verse 10, where he talks about, be still and know that I am God. And there's also some other things that are said in there that basically God is the refuge, He is the strength, and so. But that's just the little one-liner that I kept repeating to myself: be still, and know that I am God, that He's in charge, that He sees things that I don't see. And there's also some other scriptural references that, many that I've read about, especially about our Savior Jesus Christ, who. Coming to that realization that He's been through everything. What is it like to be betrayed? What is it like to be in a position where you've done nothing but good, but you've ticked a couple of people off because they didn't want to hear the truth, and they come after you and throw all these tough accusations. And I just think of all the things that He has gone through, that He's experienced. He's already been there. He's already done that. He already knows. There was one time when I was down, I was reading Job, and I was looking through everything, and though I've been blessed to not have my family taken away from me and all of that, in some senses my crops were taken away, my my cattle were taken away, and I was reading through all of his challenges. I'm going, well, I've had all of that, I've had the health challenges, I've had that. Oh, I haven't had boils. Bring on the boils. Let's get this over with. Let's get this over with. So Job's trial did end, right?
Maybe that we can call it a boil in your brain. Maybe you can check that box.
Okay. Oh, that's fantastic.
You can check that box
I'll
now,
check
Brad.
It. Thank you, Tamara. All right, God, Tamara gave me permission. I'm doing it. Hey, that actually feels good. All right, we're done. So.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
Yeah.
So are there any websites or books or music resources you could recommend to somebody who is going through an extremely hard time right now, things that have helped you in the past? Obviously, the Bible sounds like it's been a good resource.
There's been a lot of books. I was thinking about some specific ones. I know one that had a big impact on me was one of Dr. Wayne Dyer's books, You'll See It When You Believe It.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's a lot of times, well, what does our earthly experience tell us? I'll believe it when I see it. That's not how God works.
No.
You have to believe it first. And again, if you pray about it, if you feel like this is supposed to be, it'll happen. I go back to Thomas Edison and the light bulb. That was just an idea. That was just a feeling he had. It had never been created before. How do you create something from nothing? You just got to trust it and test and test and test until you finally come to the realization that it can. And the closer you get to it, that's when your self-confidence starts to build too. You start to see that, oh, there is an end. There is a possibility there. But if you never start that journey, you're never going to feel that. But that was definitely one of the books. The other thing, this is what came to me, Tamara. I think the advice I would like to give everybody out there, of course, pray about what you should read, because there's so many different opinions out there. And some of it, it's so easy to just read something and go, well, that sounds good. Let me go try that. Well, it could be devastating and actually take you backwards. And I'll just share what one of my professors shared with me one time, because when I was going through and practicing doing sessions with people, he happened to overhear what I was saying. And he says, Brad, can I give you some constructive criticism? I said, yes, please. I'd like to know, because I'd like to correct whatever I have here. He said, you actually contradicted what you said to that person. You told them to do one thing at the beginning, and then at the end of your session, you told them to do something different. And I went, okay, I wonder how that happened. He goes, I can tell you exactly how it happens. You probably read everything you get your hands on, right? I says, yes. And he goes, you probably think, all right, let me just throw this information out there, right? And I says, yes, that's basically what I did. And he goes, no, you need to establish your own belief system first. Who are you? What does the real you want? What do you believe in? Where are your lines that you will not cross? Where are your ones that are still a little gray where you're learning? Take some time, even if it takes hours, to define all of that. Then find things to support your belief system and expand on that to find the validation for the belief system. And so that's where I kind of steer people. It's not just we're just in this society where bigger, better, faster, quicker. This is the other thing too. I spent the first 8 years of my 30-year career looking for that quick fix. I was studying every clinical model under the sun. I was looking for, even overseas in different cultures, there's got to be a way that I can have a session with somebody, 2 at the most, and their whole life change. And all I learned, Tamara, in 8 years of doing that was, we don't learn that way.
No, we don't, do we?
Human beings are line upon line, precept upon precept. That's God's way. Take the time, be patient, learn it, and make it part of your life.
Wow. That is amazing. And it's true. We do learn just little bits at a time. And there have been points in my life when I've wished that we could just fast forward a little bit,
Oh, yeah, definitely. I want it all, and I want it now.
We fast forward just a smidge and skip to the end where everything's happy and hunky-dory and all that stuff. But God doesn't work that way.
No.
And we don't learn that way either. It seems to be that we have to work through the process. We have to, kind of like you were talking about earlier, what can I learn from this? You have to learn the lesson.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't come overnight. It doesn't come with 2 sessions of counseling. It usually takes months and years.
Yep.
So let's wrap this up. If people have really resonated with this or feel like they do want to contact you, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, you bet. I have my own coaching website, which is my name, bradjneufeld.com, so www.bradjneufeld.com. Our company, I have a facility that we have a day treatment program down in the Utah County area, so it's mostly local kids that we work with. Day treatment is where they come to us during the day, so we don't pull them out of the home or anything. We still send them home at night, but Monday through Friday they're with us. That's Affinity Guidance Services. We have a shortcut to that. It's agstoday.com, agstoday.com. You can email me at info@bradjneufeld.com, or you can call me at area code 435-830-6945.
Very good. And we'll put all this in the show notes so that people, if they're driving or doing laundry or something like that, they can go one place and find that. So
well, and just as an outreach service, because again, I like to share these ideas and things that I've learned over the years. I have a radio show that I do. It's called The Brad Neufeld Show. It was something I did for a number of years, a long time ago, but after all of the brain surgeries and stuff like that, it's been a slow recovery. like right now, there's times where I get these brain farts. Sorry, but it's a lot better now than what it used to be. I used to get really bad headaches after focusing for like 3 or 4 minutes, and I would just have to not focus on anything and just go, take things in, whatever. But it's a lot better now, so I wasn't able to do it. But now, recently, since things have really improved, I'm wanting to get that going again. But that's on Facebook. If you just go on Facebook and go the Brad Neufeld Show, you'll find out about that.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Thank you, Brad.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate
Thank you, Tamara.
everything, the advice, the wisdom, the stories. I love stories. Obviously, that's why I do this.
Yes.
But I love all of it because it gives us the perspective that truly we're not alone when we're experiencing hard times. So thank you for sharing
You're not
your
alone.
story.
People need people. That's my mantra.
Perfect. So thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Pope.
Thank
I
you
really
so much.
appreciate it.
This has been fun.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to today's show. I know that there are many of you out there that are going through a hard time, and I hope you found things that have been useful today as you listen to the podcast. If you would like to access the show notes from today's podcast, visit my website. It is storiesofhopepodcast.com. That is where you'll find favorite quotes from today's episode and shareable memes. And those are fun because you can share them with your friends on social media. You will also find the links mentioned throughout today's episode so you don't have to remember what those were. And also all the tips that were shared. Sometimes tips are shared so much throughout an episode you forget. What were those great things? So go to the show notes, storiesofhopepodcast.com, to look up these fantastic resources. You know, if someone kept coming to mind during today's episode, perhaps that means that you should share this with them. Maybe there was a story shared or a tip that they really, really need to hear. So go ahead and share this episode with them. May God bless you, especially if you are struggling, with hope to carry on and with the strength to keep going when things get tough. Remember to walk with Christ, and He will help bear that burden. Above all else, remember, God loves you.